Yeah, I know the title's pretty clickbaity, but I think it's actually true, and I want to show you why, and I have sort of proof, if you will. So we're going to jump over to the Wizards of the Coast website, and you can see here this is the Organized Play Adventures League section. I've been talking about this a lot lately as we were kind of going over what happened with the Icewind Dale interactive map and the new previews and things that were unlocked there. So if you scroll down, this will give you the general overview of what Adventure League is, and then it'll give you access to some supporting documents. Most importantly, the one we're going to look at is version 10.1. Now, 10.0, I actually filmed a whole video when 10.0 came out, but I wanted to check 10.1 to see if my video is actually going to be a complete waste of time. We're going to click this link, and this is going to be not to be confused with the player's handbook. This is the player's guide for A Plague of Ancients, which is the Icewind Dale Rime of the Frost Maiden season. Again, high-level Adventurers League, if you don't know what it is, they run a season kind of every year, and it's usually themed after the current kind of campaign. But there's a thing described right here called Player's Handbook, or somewhere in here, Player's Handbook +1. And what that is it's a ruling that I think is more or less designed to minimize the complexity so that Adventurers League can be relatively clean. And that's also, as far as mechanics and stuff go, and that also makes you have to make a choice. So to begin Plague of Ancients, you must create a new first level character for use in this season, playing a seasonal adventure suitable for first level characters, and or begin playing Icewind Dale Rime of the Frost Maiden. What rulebooks should I use? Here it is. At minimum, you should have access to the D&D basic rules, which are free. For optimal experience, we recommend the 5th edition Player's Handbook. When creating and advancing your character, you can use any race options listed below. You can also use any of the class rules for your character from the Player's Handbook and from one other product listed below. We refer to this campaign rule as Player's Handbook +1. It is important to note that your choice of race is not restricted by Player's Handbook +1. That's, I guess, new for Season 10. In previous Adventurers League things, you would need to have, if you chose a race from a different book, that was your +1. I'm glad to see they've changed that. And then it shows you the +1s. Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, Volo's Guide to Monsters, Xanathar's Guide to Everything. Well, you know what's missing from that list, don't you? The Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, just like the title suggests. Now, the reason that it's important to bring that up is there are several things that were maintained and have not been reprinted from the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide that in theory are now no longer accessible to you as an Adventure League player. It'll go on to say all races in the Player's Handbook are appropriate for this campaign. Additionally, you may also select a race from the sub-races list below. The following from Volos, Azamar, Furbolg, Goliath, Kobolds, and Tabaxi. Notice that they removed some options there. You don't see Goblin on that list. You don't see Orc on that list. You don't see Yuan-Ti Pureblood on that list. Or from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, Deep Gnome, Dwergar, Eladrin, Gith, Shatterkai, and the various Tiefling subraces. And then it'll continue to say you can use class and subclass options from the Player's Handbook, Xanathar's Guide, and the upcoming book, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Choose a background from the Player's Handbook or any 5th edition product. You can make up your own, that's fine. And then if you're participating in these particular adventure sets, you can use respective products to select a background or specific ones to that. But my point being, you see that Sword Coast Adventures Guide very clearly left off, and I would have said maybe it was a typo if this was 10.0, but they have updated this list to make it a 10.1, and they still have left Sword Coast Adventures Guide off that list. So what does this mean for the future of D&D, and what are my kind of speculations on this? Well, one, 4 or at least 2 of everybody's favorite cantrips are contained in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide, and that would be Green Flame Blade and Booming Blade. I think they stand a pretty good chance of being reprinted in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. We know that the Blade Singer, for example, which was also originally found in the Sword Coast Adventures Guide, is being reprinted in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. So, if we look at what has already been reprinted, several things are apparently just left behind, which I think if they're leaving them behind for the purposes of organized play means we will likely never get a reprint of them in the future. And that is the Battle Rager Barbarian. It was pretty bad. I did a fixing video on it because of that. The 2 extra totems for the Path of the Totem Warrior Barbarian, that would be, I think, the Elk and the Tiger totem. Those would be left behind. What I've seen pretty popular Arcana Domain Cleric, at least in my general circles. I've seen a lot of people seem to enjoy that. The Purple Dragon Knight Fighter, I've already discussed why I think that was done poorly. I have a video on that. The Way of the Long Death Monk, which is a bummer because I really like that particular monk. The Sun Soul Monk was reprinted. We had the Oath of the Crown Paladin. That one's left behind. Both of the rogues in this book were reprinted in Xanathar's Guide. We had the Sun Soul Monk, or sorry, the Sun Soul Monk, we already talked about that. The Storm Sorcerer, that was reprinted in Xanathar's Guide. We had the Undying Warlock, which we've already discussed is really bad because the new Undead Warlock is that just better. And then we had the Bladesinger Wizard, which we know is going to be reprinted in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which I'm assuming hopefully means that those cantrips come with it. I mean, because really, I guess it doesn't really impact you if you don't play Adventurers League, because you can do whatever you want if you're playing in a home game. But those are 2 extremely useful cantrips. A lot of people have built builds around just accessing those cantrips. And if you're removing that as an option for play choice completely, if they're not reprinted, they're lost forever and you could never play them again. So I just thought this was really interesting. What do you think this means for the future? Now, Sword Coast Adventures Guide lives in a weird world where it was the first sort of expansion to 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, where we added extra races as well as extra classes and extra backgrounds, and again, a couple of spells. But it was kind of in a weird spot where I don't think Wizards of the Coast knew what they wanted to do and how they wanted to approach that concept. So instead, it kind of gets left by the wayside more often than not. And clearly, it's left by the wayside 100% of the time. So anyway, let me know what your thoughts are on the Sword Coast Adventures Guide. Again, I did a video on looking back on it 4 years later and what my thoughts are on it. But to see it completely removed as an option, like, what downside is there to leave that option in, other than the fact that they've reprinted the Bladesinger and it might be drastically different than the Sword Coast one? But at that point, just errata it to make it the same. And that's what I would do. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And I will see you all next time.